So thunder is a sound work that's in one of the middle galleries, and it's an 11-second sound that's heard on average about 12 times an hour. And the sound you hear has gone through a process of kind of expansion and contraction, which figures in some of the other works in different ways as well. In it, I took a single thunderclap and I extended it from about 10 seconds to roughly 6 or 7 minutes. At which point, as I was working with it, it's started to sound like an orchestra tuning up. Over a relatively long period of time, that I worked with a composer called David Murphy, who transcribed that extended sound into a score for 6 instruments, which we then recorded, and all the steps that had happened out towards the extension of that sound were taken in reverse. So what you hear is a sort of approximation of a thunderclap that's being performed by 6 musical instruments that have then been time compressed. And I quite like the way that it's functioning in this show as this kind of wipe that sort of operates as this over the whole of the show in some way, as this kind of interrupter. New piece that's being shown in second middle gallery, and it's a work called like Sound Disappearing or something, which is a piece for 5 voices, which is an audio work that's installed in the space. It takes some material that came out of the production of No There Was No Red. In particular, a single conversation that 3 of the participants in that work had, in which they're describing between themselves trying to decide on certain aspects of an image of a mirage that they'd seen over Lake Michigan. But really, as I kind of listened to and transcribed that conversation between those 3 people, this sense of, if you like, the sort of bartering of description or the bartering of information happens, struck me. And I wanted to try and move those voices still further from their source, still further from this kind of original setup of 3 people talking. So I broke it down further and scored it for 5 voices and worked with a group of actors over a period of time to kind of, firstly, to sort of really break it down even further in how we rehearsed it and who we attributed lines to, but then from that to slowly kind of build it back. The way that call and response works in it is kind of broken down. It's not that one person answers someone else's question, that there's a sort of de-authoring of the voice in some way. I started to think about it originally as being something that might work as a radio play, and I'd actually still like very much for it to be broadcast in that form, because it seems to me that these voices could be kind of ongoing, that these voices are kind of somehow in the ether. No There Was No Red, which is a 2-screen rear projection, which is composed from descriptions of a mirage that a group of people, or a number of people in a town on the eastern shore of Lake Michigan had seen. And they're essentially, in a way, I suppose, describing an image of a city, but very much kind of disassembled in some way. Under certain conditions over bodies of ice or cold water, a temperature inversion can mean that superior mirage can move or can make an image from beyond the horizon visible. So a duct of air of a different relative temperature will have a different density, and it will therefore act as a kind of duct through which this kind of image can be bent. But what some people would talk about was this, yes, kind of deconstructed image of Milwaukee, I guess, essentially, that's quite often defined in terms of the relationship of points of light, and very much in relation to this idea of the horizon and these lights functioning in relation to this horizontal line. While they never address the exact nature of the image directly in what you hear, they're often relating it to the horizon and thinking about how it was relative to that. In the Piper, No There Was No Red is also, for me, very much composed musically. It takes this idea of, I guess, using the voice as something, and these descriptions as a kind of form of counterpoint. Importantly, in this show, with the work that is within this prism, it suddenly has an outside as well as an inside, and that outside is functioning in this larger gallery space, which also has an inside and an outside. So there's this kind of odd thing that starts happening about what is the inside and outside of a work somehow. In bringing these things together, I mean, it's odd, but I'm really learning a lot about this work myself. And that's really exciting to me, you know, that I'm able to be, these works are teaching me stuff that, I mean, I made them, but I didn't know that stuff was in them, or something like that. It's a kind of odd situation, to be staging these works in this way has really kind of taught me a lot about them.
Yeah, the lines that define.
It was real. We could see the car lights, we could see the street lights, we could see the buildings. They were in detail, not the fine detail, but the macro detail, and that thing was right there. It was not part of it.